I always thought my life would stay simple, especially after my mom remarried and we became a blended family. My stepsister Emily moved in with her dad not long after the wedding, and since then, we'd had a pretty easygoing relationship. She and I never got too close but managed to get along just fine. She was only a year older than me, and our parents were constantly encouraging us to bond more, suggesting things like family movie nights, weekend outings, and, of course, shared chores in the kitchen. One Saturday morning, while everyone else was out, Emily and I were left alone to prepare dinner for that night's family gathering. I went down to the kitchen early to start setting things up. I'd barely begun chopping vegetables when I heard her footsteps on the stairs, and soon enough, Emily appeared in the doorway. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, flashing a smile that seemed surprisingly sincere. I hadn't spent much time with her alone, and this was one of the first times we'd be working on something as a team. We set up our stations and started cooking side by side, and to my surprise, we quickly slipped into an easy rhythm. As we chopped, stirred, and prepped, we began talking about life, school, friends, and our shared experiences adjusting to being part of a blended family. For the first time, we really listened to each other. Emily shared some of her challenges in the new family dynamic, and I opened up about feeling like I was struggling to find my place. Our laughter filled the room, and I began to realize how alike we were in our experiences and perspectives. Then, as I was reaching for a spice jar on the top shelf, Emily surprised me by reaching over, placing her hand on mine. "Here, let me show you a trick," she said, gently guiding my hand to the right spice and showing me an easy way to open it without spilling. It was such a simple gesture, but in that moment, it felt like a breakthrough, a small act of care that bridged the gap between us. I hadn't realized how much I'd wanted to connect with her until now. Our conversation grew deeper, and before we knew it, hours had passed. The kitchen was filled with the aroma of spices and fresh vegetables, and as we set the table, I felt a new sense of warmth and kinship with her. Emily and I had shared a surprising moment in the kitchen that day, one that brought us closer and allowed us to understand each other in a way we hadn't before. When our parents returned home, they noticed the difference. They exchanged glances, their smiles full of warmth and approval. They could see that something had changed, that we'd formed a bond that would help bring our family even closer. As the night went on, Emily and I sat side by side, casually talking while waiting for our dishes to finish cooking. With our parents out, there was no pressure. Just two siblings who hadn't taken the time to understand each other until now. Emily shared more about her life before her dad remarried, about the friends she missed and the challenges of moving. I listened, feeling for the first time that I wasn't the only one who'd been overwhelmed by the changes our family had gone through. I could tell she'd needed someone to confide in, just as I had. When our pasta sauce began to simmer over the stove, I got flustered and fumbled to lower the heat. Emily stepped in smoothly, adjusting it with a confidence that made me laugh. "You really know your way around the kitchen," I said, impressed. She grinned and replied, "Dad taught me a lot. Cooking was kind of our thing." It dawned on me that Emily had always felt closer to her dad than anyone else, and this cooking session must have brought back some memories for her, too. Then, she looked at me, her eyes soft. "You know, I was worried you'd hate me when we first moved in. I didn't know if I'd ever really feel like part of this family." The vulnerability in her voice caught me off guard. I had never seen her as someone with insecurities. She always seemed so confident. But now I could see that she, too, had her own worries and fears. "You're kidding, right? I thought you were going to see me as the annoying kid brother," I replied, half joking but a little sheepish. She laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that felt real, like we were finally seeing each other as real people, not just step-siblings thrown together by circumstance. Dinner was ready by the time our parents returned, and as we all gathered around the table, they noticed right away that something had changed. My mom raised an eyebrow, giving me a playful nudge, as if to say, "So, you two finally bonded?" It was hard not to feel the warmth that filled the room, a stark difference from our usual, somewhat forced family dinners. Emily and I continued chatting even after the meal, sharing inside jokes and recounting the small disasters of our cooking adventure. By the end of the night, I realized something important. This wasn't just a kitchen encounter. It was the beginning of a friendship with Emily, my stepsister. We'd broken down the walls that kept us distant, finding common ground in ways we hadn't expected. As we cleaned up the kitchen together, Emily suddenly turned to me and said, "Let's do this again sometime. Just us." I nodded, smiling, feeling for the first time that we were really becoming family. In the weeks that followed, Emily and I found ourselves spending more time together. Whether it was helping each other with homework, tackling weekend chores, or preparing dinner again, we'd become a real team. Our parents couldn't have been happier seeing us finally getting along, and we both noticed how much more at ease the whole family felt. One Saturday afternoon, our parents decided to host a big family barbecue, inviting relatives and friends over for the first time since the wedding. Emily and I were assigned to the kitchen and grill duties again, and by now, we worked together almost like clockwork. We had our little routines and inside jokes. She'd chop vegetables while I marinated the meat, and we'd laugh about how it felt like we were on a cooking show. But as more relatives started arriving, I could see Emily getting a bit tense. She had mentioned before that she didn't know a lot of people from my mom's side, and she worried about being accepted by extended family. She'd lived in a small town before, with close-knit friends and family, and this was an entirely new world for her. "Hey, you okay?" I asked her, nudging her gently as we put out bowls of chips and salsa. She gave a small smile, but her eyes revealed her nerves. "Yeah, it's just weird, you know? I feel like an outsider sometimes, even though I know everyone's nice. I just don't want them to feel like I'm intruding." I could relate to that feeling, having felt the same way about Emily and her dad when they first moved in. I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Trust me, they'll love you once they get to know you. And besides, you've got me as your partner in crime." She chuckled, her shoulders relaxing as we went back to our prep work. Throughout the barbecue, I stayed by her side, introducing her to relatives and sharing stories to help break the ice. It was incredible to watch her open up and connect with my extended family, winning them over with her warmth and humor. My cousins loved her stories about her small-town adventures, and my aunts kept complimenting her on her cooking skills. It was amazing to see her find her place in my family, and I could tell she felt more at home than ever.